bucket of wood ash in your garage black gold for your garden? Or is it a silent poison that's about to ruin your soil for years to come? For generations, gardeners have sworn by it. But online, you'll see just as many people calling it a garden killer. So, what's the real story? The truth is, both sides are right and both sides are wrong. Using wood ash is like handling dynamite. Used correctly, it can blast your garden's productivity into the stratosphere. But one simple mistake, one misunderstanding of what it actually does, can create a crater in your garden bed where nothing will grow. In this video, we are ending the debate once and for all. We're going to uncover the science, expose the myths, and give you a simple, foolproof guide on exactly when to use wood ash and when to keep it far, far away from your precious plants. Stick around, because the one thing you think you know about ash is probably the very thing that's holding your garden back. Before we dive into the good and the bad, let's take a step back in time. Using wood ash on soil is not a newfangled internet hack. It's an ancient practice stretching back thousands of years to the very dawn of agriculture. Our ancestors, without access to modern chemical fertilizers, were masters of observation. They noticed that areas where forests had burned often grew back with incredible vigor. They saw that the grey, fluffy residue left after their cooking and heating fires had a magical effect on their crops. This became a cornerstone of farming. In many early agricultural systems, it was a closed loop. Wood was harvested from the land, burned for warmth and cooking, and the resulting ash was returned to the very same soil to replenish it. This ash was their primary source of essential minerals like potassium and phosphorus, long before we even knew what those elements were. It was prized as a free, powerful potash fertilizer, a term that literally comes from pot ash, referring to the practice of leaching wood ash in a pot to extract the soluble potassium. This long history is why the advice, use wood ash, is so deeply ingrained in our gardening culture. It's a tradition passed down through generations. But here's the critical difference. Our ancestors were working with native soils and pure, untreated wood. Today, our soils are different, our wood sources are questionable, and our understanding of soil chemistry is far more advanced. The ancient wisdom is still valid, but it needs a modern-day instruction manual. So let's start with the main reason people get so excited about wood ash. Potassium. This is the K in the NPK fertilizer ratio you see on bags at the garden centre. If nitrogen is for leafy green growth and phosphorus is for roots and shoots, then potassium is the master regulator for overall plant health and vigour. Think of it as the plant's multivitamin and stress reducer. Potassium is absolutely crucial for the process of photosynthesis, helping the plant convert sunlight into usable energy. It also regulates the opening and closing of stomata, the tiny pores on leaves that control water loss, making plants more resilient to drought and temperature swings. But its most celebrated role is in flowering and fruiting. Adequate potassium leads to more abundant blossoms, larger, more flavourful fruits, and stronger, sturdier stems to support them. Wood ash, particularly from hardwoods like oak and maple, is an incredibly rich source of potassium. It can contain anywhere from 3 to 10% potassium by weight, making it one of the most potent organic sources available. When you apply wood ash, you're giving your fruiting plants like tomatoes, peppers, and squash the exact fuel they need to produce a bumper crop. This is the magic that gardeners have observed for centuries, and it's 100% based in solid plant science. It's the primary reason wood ash earned its legendary reputation as a garden booster. While potassium gets all the glory, wood ash is far from a one-trick pony. It's a complex cocktail of minerals that were originally drawn up from deep within the soil by the tree's roots. When the wood is burned, the organic matter, nitrogen, and sulfur are lost as gas, but the mineral content becomes concentrated in the ash. One of the other major players here is phosphorus, the P in NPK. Ash typically contains about 1 to 3% phosphate. While that might not sound like a lot, it's a vital nutrient for early plant development, strong root growth, and the transfer of energy throughout the plant. Beyond the big three, wood ash is a treasure trove of micronutrients that are often depleted in garden soils. It contains a significant amount of calcium, which is essential for building strong cell walls and preventing common problems like blossom end rot in tomatoes. It also provides magnesium, a central component of the chlorophyll molecule itself, meaning it's directly involved in giving leaves their green colour. And the list goes on. You'll find trace amounts of iron, manganese, zinc, and copper in wood ash. These are the spark plugs of the plant world, needed in tiny amounts but critical for activating various enzymes and metabolic processes. Using wood ash is like giving your soil a broad-spectrum mineral supplement, returning a diverse array of elements that plants need for robust, long-term health. Now we move from what's in the ash to what ash does to your soil. This is where things start to get tricky, and it's the single most important concept to understand. The most dramatic effect of adding wood ash is its ability to raise the soil's pH level. Let's break that down. The pH scale from 0 to 14 measures how acidic or alkaline something is, with 7 being neutral. Most vegetables, fruits and flowers prefer a slightly acidic to neutral soil, typically in the 6.0 to 7.0 range. Wood ash is highly alkaline. Its main components are calcium carbonate and potassium carbonate, which are the same chemical compounds found in agricultural lime. When you add wood ash to your soil, it acts just like lime, neutralizing acidity and making the soil more alkaline. This can be a massive benefit if, and only if, you are starting with acidic soil. Many regions, particularly those with high rainfall and evergreen forests, naturally have acidic soil. In these conditions, adding wood ash can be a game changer. It can sweeten the soil, bringing the pH up into that ideal range where nutrients are most available to plants. By correcting the pH, you're not just adding nutrients from the ash, you're unlocking the existing nutrients in your soil that were previously unavailable to your plants due to the high acidity. This liming effect is powerful, fast-acting, and free. It's a major reason why ash is so valued, but it is a double-edged sword that can cause catastrophic damage if your soil isn't acidic to begin with. Let's tackle a common piece of folklore you'll hear in every gardening club, using wood ash to deter pests, specifically slugs and snails. The theory seems plausible on the surface. Slugs and snails have soft, moist bodies. Wood ash is a dry, caustic, and salty substance. The idea is that if you create a barrier of ash around your precious hostas or lettuce seedlings, these slimy invaders will be unwilling to cross it, as it would desiccate and irritate their bodies. Many old-time gardeners swear by this method, and if you try it on a dry day, you might even see some initial success. The slugs might indeed turn back from the abrasive, dusty ring you've laid down. However, the reality is that this is a temporary and highly unreliable solution at best. The moment there's a light rain, a heavy dew, or you water your plants, that protective barrier of ash turns into a wet, sludgy paste. Not only is this paste completely ineffective at stopping slugs, they will glide right over it, but it also concentrates the alkaline salts directly on the soil surface, which can be harmful. Furthermore, to create a truly effective physical barrier, you'd need to apply a very thick layer of ash, far more than what is safe for the soil's chemistry. So while it might offer a fleeting moment of protection, relying on wood ash for slug control is a poor strategy. It ignores the far more significant chemical impact ash has on your soil, and its effectiveness as a pest barrier disappears with the first drop of moisture. Better to stick with proven methods like beer traps or copper tape. Beyond its chemical properties, wood ash can also have a positive physical effect on certain types of soil. Specifically, if you're struggling with heavy, dense clay soil, a judicious application of ash can help improve its structure. Clay soil is made of very fine, flat particles that tend to compact together, leaving little room for air or water to penetrate. This can lead to poor drainage, waterlogged roots, and a hard, concrete-like surface when it dries out. The fine particles of wood ash, when mixed into heavy clay, can help to break up this dense structure. The ash particles get in between the tiny clay platelets, a process called flocculation, causing them to clump together into larger aggregates. These larger clumps create more pore space within the soil. More pore space means better aeration, allowing plant roots to breathe. It also means improved drainage, so water can move through the soil profile instead of sitting on top and drowning your plants. This improvement in tilth, or the physical condition of the soil, makes it easier for roots to grow and spread, and for beneficial soil organisms to thrive. It's important to note that this is not a magical fix. You must incorporate the ash thoroughly into the top few inches of the soil. Simply sprinkling it on top won't do much for structure. And again, this benefit must be weighed against the significant impact on pH. It's only a viable strategy for heavy clay soils that are also acidic. For sandy or loamy soils, ash will not provide any significant structural benefits. Alright, we've talked about the good. Now let's turn the corner and look at the dark side of wood ash. This is where most gardeners go wrong, and the consequences can be devastating. We mentioned that ash's liming effect is a benefit in acidic soil. But what if your soil is already neutral, or even worse, alkaline? In this scenario, adding wood ash is like pouring gasoline on a fire. You will be dropping a pH bomb on your garden. By adding this highly alkaline material to soil that doesn't need it, you can rapidly push the pH from a healthy 6.5 or 7 up to an 8 or even higher. This is a catastrophic chemical shift for most plants. At these high pH levels, a chemical reaction called nutrient lockout occurs. Even if your soil is packed with essential nutrients like iron, manganese, and phosphorus, they become chemically bound to the soil particles in a form that plant roots cannot absorb. Your plants will literally be starving in a sea of plenty. They will show signs of deficiency, like yellowing leaves, chlorosis, from a lack of iron, despite there being plenty of iron in the soil. This is one of the most common and disastrous mistakes a well-intentioned gardener can make. They add ash, thinking they're feeding their plants, but they are actually locking the pantry door and throwing away the key. The damage can take years to reverse, often requiring repeated applications of acidifying agents like sulfur to slowly bring the pH back down. This single issue is the number one reason you must never, ever apply wood ash without first knowing your soil's starting pH. This next point is a cardinal sin of using wood ash, and it's one that can turn your garden from a healthy ecosystem into a toxic waste site. The source of your ash matters more than anything else. The advice to use wood ash assumes you are burning clean, natural, untreated hardwood. However, in the modern world, much of the wood that gets burned is anything but clean. If you burn wood that has been pressure treated, stained, painted, or is from manufactured products like particle board, MDF, or plywood, you are creating a hazardous material, not a garden amendment. Treated lumber is infused with chemicals to prevent rot and insect damage, most commonly arsenic, chromium, and copper. When you burn this wood, these toxic heavy metals don't disappear. They become highly concentrated in the remaining ash. Spreading this ash in your vegetable garden means you are directly contaminating your soil with known carcinogens. These heavy metals can be taken up by the roots of your vegetables and accumulate in the parts you eat. You could be serving your family a side of arsenic with their fresh-grown carrots. The same goes for burning trash, glossy magazines, cardboard with coloured inks, or plastics. The resulting ash is a cocktail of dangerous chemicals. Never, under any circumstances, should ash from these sources be used in your garden. The risk to your health and the long-term health of your soil is far too great. Stick to pure, raw, unadulterated wood only. Let's expand on the idea of toxic sources, because it's not just about treated wood. It's crucial to understand the difference between wood ash and other types of ash. The most common and dangerous imposter is coal ash. If you have a coal-burning stove or fireplace, the ash it produces is completely different from wood ash and must be disposed of, never used in the garden. Coal is a fossil fuel, and as such, it contains a wide array of heavy metals and other contaminants that were present in the ancient organic matter it formed from. Coal ash is notorious for containing high levels of arsenic, mercury, lead, and cadmium. These are all extremely toxic to plants, soil life, and humans. Applying coal ash to your garden is an act of permanent contamination. Similarly, ash from charcoal briquettes, the kind you use for a backyard barbecue, is also a major no-go. Most commercial briquettes contain additives and binders to help them light easily and burn evenly. These can include things like coal dust, sodium nitrate, or borax. The chemical makeup of the ash is unknown and unsafe for edible gardens. Even so-called natural lump charcoal can be problematic if you don't know the source of the wood. The only safe ash is ash that you know, 100% for sure, comes from burning clean raw wood. When in doubt, always throw it out. The potential reward is never worth the risk of introducing permanent toxic pollutants into your soil. So you've confirmed your ash is from a clean source and you know your soil is acidic. You're ready to go, right? Not so fast. Even if your general garden soil would benefit from a higher pH, you have to consider the specific needs of individual plants. There is a whole category of plants known as acid-loving or ericaceous plants, and for them, wood ash is a death sentence. These plants have evolved to thrive in acidic soils, typically with a pH between 4.5 and 5.5. Their entire root system and nutrient uptake mechanisms are adapted to these specific conditions. Applying alkaline wood ash anywhere near them is a surefire way to kill them slowly and painfully. The classic example is the blueberry. Blueberries require highly acidic soil to absorb iron. When the pH rises, they quickly develop severe iron chlorosis, with their leaves turning a sickly yellow while the veins remain green, before eventually dying. The same goes for other beloved landscape plants like rhododendrons, azaleas, hydrangeas, if you want them to stay blue, camellias, and gardenias. Even common edibles like potatoes prefer slightly acidic soil to prevent a disease called potato scab, which thrives in more alkaline conditions. Before you broadcast wood ash across your entire garden, you must map out where your acid-loving plants are and create a strict no ash zone around them. A single application can set these plants back for years or kill them outright. We touched on this earlier, but the concept of nutrient lockout is so critical it deserves its own deep dive. It's the most insidious problem caused by the overuse of wood ash because it's completely counterintuitive. You add something that contains nutrients and your plants become nutrient deficient. How does this work? It all comes down to soil chemistry. Plant roots don't just suck up nutrients like a vacuum cleaner. They can only absorb minerals that are dissolved in the soil water and are in a specific ionic form. The pH of that soil water dictates which mineral forms are present and available. In the ideal, slightly acidic range of 6 to 7, most key nutrients, including nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, calcium, magnesium, and sulfur, are readily available. However, as you add wood ash and the pH climbs above 7.5 and into the alkaline range, a chemical transformation begins. Phosphorus starts to bind with the high levels of calcium from the ash, forming calcium phosphate, a compound that is not water-soluble and thus unavailable to plants. More dramatically, essential micronutrients like iron, manganese, and zinc also get locked up. They precipitate out of the soil solution, essentially turning into microscopic rocks that the roots cannot absorb. So even though the nutrient is physically present in the soil, it's in a form the plant can't use. This is why you see yellowing leaves on a plant in rich, dark soil that has been made too alkaline. The plant is sending a clear signal that it's starving for iron, not because the soil is poor, but because the chemical environment is wrong. Here's another hidden danger lurking within that seemingly harmless grey powder: salt. Wood ash contains soluble salts, primarily potassium and calcium carbonates and oxides. In small, appropriate amounts, these are beneficial nutrients. However, when applied too heavily or too frequently, these salts can build up in the soil to damaging levels. Think about what happens when you pour salt on a slug. It shrivels up because the salt, draws all the water out of its body through osmosis. A similar, albeit slower process can happen to the delicate roots of your plants. High salt concentrations in the soil create a physiologically dry environment. Even if the soil is moist, the high salt content in the soil water makes it difficult for the roots to draw that water into the plant. In extreme cases, the osmotic pressure can reverse, and water can actually be pulled out of the roots and into the soil, causing the plant to wilt and die, even in damp ground. This is often referred to as fertilizer burn. The edges of the leaves may turn brown and crispy, and new growth may be stunted or distorted. Young seedlings are particularly vulnerable to salt damage. A heavy-handed application of fresh wood ash around the base of a tender young plant can easily burn and kill its developing root system. This is why the light dusting rule is so important. Too much of a good thing quickly becomes a poison, and the salt content in wood ash is a prime example of this principle in action. Many savvy gardeners know the value of a good compost pile, and it's tempting to think that adding wood ash would be a great way to enrich the final product. The logic seems sound. Add a source of potassium and minerals to the decomposing organic matter. Unfortunately, throwing raw wood ash directly into your compost bin is one of the biggest mistakes you can make, and it can wreck your entire batch of black gold. The problem, once again, is the immediate and dramatic effect on pH. A healthy compost pile relies on a vast army of microorganisms, bacteria and fungi, to break down the organic material. These microbes, much like garden plants, work best in a near-neutral pH environment. When you dump a large quantity of highly alkaline wood ash into the bin, you shock the system. The pH can skyrocket, creating an environment that is hostile to many of the most efficient decomposer organisms. This can slow down or even completely halt the composting process. Furthermore, another crucial process in composting is the retention of nitrogen. A key reaction is inhibited by high pH, causing the valuable nitrogen in your green materials, like grass clippings and kitchen scraps, to convert into ammonia gas and float away. You can often smell this. If your compost pile suddenly starts to smell strongly of ammonia after adding ash, that's the smell of your fertilizer literally vanishing into thin air. You're actively making your compost less nutritious. So, after all those warnings, how do we use wood ash safely and effectively? It all begins with one non-negotiable first step, the golden rule. You must test your soil. Guessing your soil's pH is like performing surgery blindfolded. You might get lucky, but the chances of doing serious harm are incredibly high. A simple, inexpensive soil pH test kit is one of the most valuable tools a gardener can own. You can buy them at any garden centre, or for a more accurate reading, you can send a soil sample to your local cooperative extension service. You need a baseline number. Is your soil a 5.5, a 6.8, a 7.3? Without this single piece of information, any application of wood ash is a complete gamble. If your test reveals that your soil is acidic, with a pH below 6.5, then you can consider using wood ash. If your test shows your soil is already 7.0 or higher, the decision is simple. Do not add wood ash. Period. There is no benefit to be gained, only damage to be done. This initial test is your permission slip. It's the green light that tells you wood ash could be a helpful tool for your specific garden. It takes the guesswork out of the equation and replaces it with data, which is the foundation of all successful gardening. Don't listen to a neighbour. Don't follow a generic online guide blindly. Listen to your soil. Once your soil test gives you the green light, the next critical factor is the quality of your ash. As we've established, not all ash is created equal. The source matters immensely. The absolute best and safest wood ash comes from burning seasoned, dense hardwoods. Trees like oak, maple, hickory, and fruitwoods like apple and cherry produce the highest quality ash. Their dense structure means they contain a greater concentration of minerals, particularly potassium and calcium, compared to softer woods. This makes their ash a more potent and effective soil amendment. Softwoods such as pine, spruce and fir can also be used, but their ash is generally considered lower in quality. It has a lower mineral content and a slightly less powerful liming effect. The most important thing is that the wood must be clean. It cannot be painted, stained, pressure treated or glued. It must be pure, natural wood. If you have a wood-burning stove for heat, you likely have a perfect source of high-quality ash. If you're sourcing ash from a bonfire or fire pit, be absolutely certain that no trash, plastics, or treated lumber was burned in it. The ideal ash is a fine, soft, light grey or white powder. If you see chunks of charcoal, it's best to sift them out, as they break down very slowly and don't provide the same immediate chemical benefits. Sourcing your ash carefully is just as important as testing your soil. Now we get to the practical application. How much ash should you actually use? This is where the mantra, less is more, is your best friend. The biggest mistake after applying it to alkaline soil is applying it too heavily. Wood ash is powerful and concentrated. You do not need a lot to make a big difference. The goal is a light, even dusting, not a thick blanket. Think of it like dusting a cake with powdered sugar, not frosting it with a spatula. A good, safe rule of thumb for a general application to raise pH in acidic soil is to use about 5 to 10 pounds per 1,000 square feet. That's a 20 by 50 foot garden patch. 10 pounds of fluffy ash can look like a lot, so it's easy to overdo it. It's often better to apply it in smaller increments over several seasons rather than trying to make a massive pH adjustment all at once. For individual plants like a tomato or a lilac bush, a small handful, maybe half a cup, worked into the soil around the drip line of the plant once a year is plenty. Never pile fresh ash directly against the stem or crown of a plant, as the concentrated salts can burn the tissue. Always apply it to the soil, and then gently work it into the top inch or two with a rake or cultivator. This incorporation is key to making it effective and preventing it from simply blowing away or forming a crust on the surface. The timing of your wood ash application can also influence its effectiveness and safety. While you can apply it at almost any time the ground isn't frozen, there are two main strategic windows: late fall/winter and early spring. Applying ash in the fall or over the winter is often considered the ideal method. By spreading the ash over the garden beds after you've cleared out the season's plants, you allow the winter rains and snowmelt to do the work of incorporating it into the soil for you. This gives the ash several months to react with the soil, gently raising the pH and making the nutrients available by the time spring planting season arrives. This slow, natural integration is less of a shock to the soil ecosystem than a heavy spring application. However, applying it in early spring is also very effective. You can spread the ash a few weeks before you plant a plant, tilling or raking it into the top few inches of soil. This ensures the nutrients are ready and waiting for the new season's seedlings. The one time you should be most cautious is applying fresh ash to actively growing young plants. Their tender roots are more susceptible to salt burn. If you need to apply it mid-season, it's best to side dress, meaning you apply it to the soil several inches away from the base of the plant and water it in well to dilute the salts and help them move into the root zone. So, which plants will actually throw a party if you give them a dose of wood ash? While most vegetables prefer slightly acidic soil, there are a number of plants that thrive in neutral to slightly alkaline conditions, often called alkaline-loving or lime-loving plants. These are the prime candidates for a direct application of wood ash. Members of the Brassica family, which includes broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts, are famously fond of sweet soil. A bit of ash can help them grow strong and can also help prevent a common disease called clubroot, which prefers acidic conditions. Asparagus is another crop that appreciates an alkaline soil and will reward you with a more robust harvest. Certain root vegetables like beets and parsnips also do well in these conditions. In the flower garden, the undisputed queen of alkaline soil is the lilac. Lilacs are notorious for failing to bloom in acidic soil, and an annual application of wood ash is a classic trick to encourage a stunning display of fragrant flowers. Clematis vines and lavender also prefer a less acidic environment. Remember, even these plants don't want a sky-high pH. The goal is to bring the soil into their preferred range, usually between 6.5 and 7.5. Using wood ash strategically on these specific plants, while avoiding your acid lovers, is the hallmark of an experienced gardener who understands their soil and their plants' individual needs. Earlier, I warned against dumping raw ash into your compost bin, but is there a safe way to incorporate the mineral benefits of ash into your compost? Yes, there is, but it requires patience and a different approach. The key is to avoid shocking the system. Instead of adding a large amount of raw ash directly to your main compost pile, you should precondition it. The safest method is to create a separate small pile of finished or nearly finished compost. Lightly sprinkle a small amount of wood ash into this compost, mixing it in thoroughly. The goal is a ratio of no more than about 1 bucket of ash to a large wheelbarrow full of compost. Moisten this mixture and let it sit for several weeks or even a couple of months. During this time, the strong alkalinity of the ash will be buffered and neutralised by the organic matter and microbial life in the compost. The valuable minerals from the ash will become integrated into the stable humus complexes of the compost. What you are left with is a supercharged, pH-balanced compost that is safe to use anywhere in your garden. This ash-amended compost is a fantastic, well-rounded fertiliser that provides both organic matter and a slow-release source of potassium and trace minerals without the risk of pH shock or nitrogen loss. It takes an extra step, but it's the professional way to harness the power of ash without any of the drawbacks. For gardeners who want the nutrient benefits of wood ash without the dramatic pH impact, or for those who want to give their plants a quick mid-season boost, there is another technique, creating ash tea. This is a simple liquid fertiliser that is fast-acting and easier to control than a dry application. To make it, you essentially steep wood ash in water. The process is straightforward. Take about 1 or 2 pounds of sifted wood ash, that's roughly a 5-pound coffee can, about half full, and place it in a porous sack, like a burlap bag or an old pillowcase. Tie the top securely and submerge it in a large 5-gallon bucket of water. Let this mixture steep for several days, stirring it once or twice a day. The water will slowly extract the soluble nutrients, particularly the potassium, from the ash. The resulting liquid will be a nutrient-rich, light brown tea. After a few days, remove the bag of ash. You can then dilute this liquid concentrate with more water, typically at a 1:1 or 1:2 ratio, until it is the colour of weak tea. This liquid can be used as a soil drench around the base of your plants, providing a quick release dose of potassium and micronutrients. Because it's heavily diluted, its effect on the overall soil pH is much less pronounced than applying the dry powder. It's an excellent way to feed heavy fruiting plants like tomatoes and peppers during their peak production. Finally, let's talk about the ultimate litmus test, your plants. Even if you've done everything right, it's possible to overdo it. Your plants are the final judge and jury, and they will give you clear visual cues if you've pushed the soil too far into the alkaline range with too much wood ash. The most common and immediate sign is intervenal chlorosis, which we've mentioned before. This is the classic symptom of iron or manganese deficiency caused by high pH. Look at the new leaves at the top of the plant. If the leaves are turning pale yellow or even white, but the veins remain a stark, dark green, that's a huge red flag. It looks like a little green skeleton of a leaf. This is your plant screaming that it cannot access the iron it needs. Another sign is stunted growth. If your plants seem to have just stopped growing, if new shoots are small and weak, and the overall plant lacks vigour compared to previous years, it could be a sign that the soil chemistry is off. You might also see an increase in certain diseases. Potato scab, for example, creates rough, corky lesions on the skin of potatoes and thrives in alkaline soil. If you see these signs after applying wood ash, stop immediately. Your next step should be to retest the soil, to confirm your suspicions, and then begin the slow process of reacidifying the soil using amendments like elemental sulfur, pine needle mulch, or peat moss. So, what's the final verdict in the great wood-ash debate? It's not black and white, it's grey, just like the ash itself. Wood ash is not a miracle cure-all, and it's not a garden villain. It is a powerful, specific tool for a specific job, raising the pH of acidic soil while delivering a potent dose of potassium and micronutrients. The moment you use it outside of that specific context, on alkaline soil, from a contaminated source, or near acid-loving plants, it transforms from a tool into a weapon that can inflict long-term damage on your garden's delicate ecosystem. The most important takeaway from all of this is to test, don't guess. Arming yourself with the knowledge of your soil's pH is the single most important step you can take. It turns a risky gamble into a calculated scientific decision. So before you sprinkle that next bucket of ash, invest in a simple soil test. It's the cheapest garden insurance you'll ever buy. Thank you so much for watching and digging deep into this topic with us. If this video helped clear things up, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more no-nonsense gardening advice. Now, I want to hear from you. What has been your experience with wood ash? Share your biggest success story or your most epic failure in the comments below. Let's all learn from each other.